What's going on, guys? This is Foresight Capital, and today I'm going to show you how I quickly analyze Palantir and draw out the chart for you all. We've been following a specific chart that I drew out about 2 weeks ago, and I've erased nearly everything off of the chart so that we can start fresh and build it together so that you can get a good idea for exactly how I've drawn the lines and their individual price points. That's been one of the most heavily requested videos in the comments, is to go back and kind of recreate the chart from scratch. This works with all stocks, not just Palantir, but it's one that's been very popular on this channel, so I wanted to go back and recreate the entire thing from scratch. Now, Palantir is relatively recently introduced to the public markets, so sometimes I actually use a one-day stock chart. In this case, because Palantir is so new to the public markets, we're going to use something a little bit more short-term, and that's going to be a 20-day, 1-hour candlestick chart. Though with any other stock, you can pick whether or not you want to look at a daily time frame, a 4-hour time frame, or something even as small as a 5-minute time frame if you're a little bit more micro of a trader. I feel like a 1-hour time frame is great for this stock, so we're going to go ahead and start marking that up. All that I ask is that if this video brings you value, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing, because we do deep dives on stocks like this all the time, and it really helps this channel reach more people across the platform as well. So the very first thing I look at when looking at a stock is actually building it from the bottom down and drawing lines of support and resistance that I can identify quickly within the stock. Now, I've left the moving averages on here just to not have to go back in and add those, but I use a 200, 50, and 9 period moving average, and you can select moving average periods that work best for you, but most traders will use the 50 and 200 period moving averages for slightly longer terms, and a 9 period moving average if they're a very quick trader. So the very first price level I want to identify is right down here at the recent lows of 1380, and you can't really see the price action to the left of this currently, but effectively we were on a bit of an uptrend, and it spiked up to about $14 per share before having a little bit of a pullback to 1380, and we created some support with this. So I'm going to go ahead and mark up this line. We will recreate it blue exactly like the chart that I already had made and make it a little thicker so it's easier to identify. The next level of support that we really have within Palantir, if we follow the trend line up here, you could say that there was a little bit of a consolidation period here, but it was very brief before having another spike in price. And realistically, the next big level of support that we have is on this pullback and consolidation before spiking above the 50 and then 9 period moving average. And that's right at $18 per share, or just a couple of cents over. So if we actually extend that out to the left here, we can see that it was used multiple times as we had this spike, and then we consolidated right along 18, tried to push up a little bit, pulled back before ultimately going on this major run. So while it doesn't look like it's a major level of support, it could be if we had a pullback that far. This was identified as the orange support line, and we'll go ahead and make that a little thicker and extend it out to the left here as well. So now that we've passed this $18 per share support line, we really saw some crazy price action in the stock, and the next real level of support that we have, which was also used as resistance right around the same time, is about the $22 to $22.20 per share range. So we'll go ahead and draw that out. Now this is actually an update from my previous chart because I had it drawn up at about $22.60 per share, but on the price action from the pullback that we had from all-time highs of about $33.50 back down, we actually saw us dip below this support level, and we were actually caught by the long-term uptrend, which we're going to draw a little later in the video. But I feel like closer to $22 to $22.20 was more resistance here, and then used as support before continuing the next leg up in this trend. And so that's the thing about technical analysis, and some traders are a little bit more specific about their lines than I am. I'm not one of those traders that's trading with enough volume or enough size to realistically have to worry about pennies. Most of my positions are under $10,000. Occasionally I put on a larger position, but for the most part, they're going to be in the sub $10,000 range, so I'm not particularly worried about pennies. So plus or minus a couple cents on any of these, as long as you get a good entry, that's all you're really looking for when trading these stocks. The next leg up that we had within this uptrend, we can see is close to the 2460 level, and that was basically the top of these candles here. So very short-term resistance here, but we can see that that line was successfully used multiple times later on throughout the trend. Once we started covering the stock on the way back down, we had an indecision candle before ultimately kind of breaking below that support line, and then use this 2460 level as resistance multiple times throughout the next couple of trading days before ultimately spiking above it again. So I feel like this is a pretty strong support and resistance line, and we're going to go ahead and edit this one to be the yellow line as it has been in previous videos. And the next level that we realistically have been working with is the $27.67 per share level. So that is the one that we have currently been flirting with for the past couple of trading days, and we'll go ahead and mark it here and identify where it was used in the chart. So we started covering the stock right in this range, and we had a big run up in price from basically the green support line all the way up to the red here, about the 2765 to 2770 range before spiking above it, using it as support multiple times when this downtrend started before ultimately breaking all the way back down to both the long-term support and 200-day moving average. So this was actually a very strong support line and should prove to be a very strong resistance line over the next couple of trading days, as we've seen the price has been flirting with it from Wednesday afternoon all the way through Friday, and should open up Monday morning trading right around that level. And then the next level is really just all-time highs at about $33.50 per share. Again, plus or minus a couple cents. A stock is rarely ever going to hit exactly all-time highs and pull back, but as long as you're within a couple of cents, if you're trying to enter the actual trade or take profits at this level, it's going to be about $33.50. So we've got each of our support and resistance lines actually drawn out here, and I'll go back and make a little box a little later in the video. But the next thing we want to do is take a look at the long-term trend as well to see if we can identify one. And the most easily identifiable one is, again, you can't see the price action to the left of this, but it was essentially a run-up and then a little bit of a pullback to this 1380 level. You could say that this was the start of the new trend and that we've used a sort of straight up or slanted line for basically the last couple, the past month and a half or so. Sorry for my words there. We'll go ahead and make this a little thicker, and we can see here that from the bottom of this trend, we pulled back and tested this trend line here, went up to all-time highs and pulled back to again test the trend line. And yes, this splits right through a candle, but overall we ended up closing above this line. So I feel like it's a pretty strong trend line and have been following it for quite some time. This is the trend line that actually created the wedges that we traded in between the short-term downtrend, which we're going to mark up as 33.50, and then the stock price ultimately kind of came up and tested it multiple times. So we'll kind of draw this right through here, extend it to the right, and this has actually been our short-term downtrend line that we've had identified by this pink color here, and we'll make this a little wider. So this long-term trend upward created the wedge that we traded in before ultimately spiking up, and now we're kind of entering the same wedge pattern over here. So if we actually extend this chart out to the right about 75 periods, which is 75 hours, we'll see that we're trading right into a decision where we have to determine whether or not we're going to follow this trend that we've had going on for the past month and a half, or whether we're going to break down below it. And if we break above, as I feel like Palantir will, we could see a pretty quick rise back to all-time highs. We broke above this support line or this resistance line once before and had a little bit of a pullback, but this wedge is going to give us a little bit more volume, I feel, to kind of push us up to all-time highs. So that's how I'm kind of playing out the trade over the next couple of days. So we've pretty much here identified each of the major support and resistance levels, keeping in mind that all of these are plus or minus a couple of cents, and they've been major price points for the stock for one reason or another. And just always remember that previous support lines can act as resistance lines if the stock has fallen, and previous resistance lines can act as support lines if the stock has gone up. So each of these can be support or resistance lines. It's not one or the other. But the biggest lines that we've got going on here that we're playing with currently are this 2760 to 2770 level and this long-term support line that's creating the wedge that made the stock break out once before. Now this was also in line with some news reports, so I think it was a little bit played out because we had the wedge pattern closing and we had some buying action from the good news within the stock. But I think here, pending no news events, we're going to see the same sort of wedge pattern and a possible breakout. Now I've drawn this long-term trend line a little tighter than previously. It was previously crossing through this 2760 level a little further out here in Tuesday or Wednesday. We could see a pretty big spike on Monday morning if this is a more accurate trend line that I've drawn after having this price action kind of updated. So we'll see how that plays out on Monday, but I just kind of wanted to show you all really quickly how I identify the price levels and redraw it out for you. We should have a pretty accurate replication of the chart that we've been following for quite some time. And again, it's actually shared down in the description below if you want to download that, but you will need to have the TD Ameritrade platform. So I know that this video ran a little long, but I just kind of wanted to give that update and recreate the pattern so that you can see exactly what I was talking about with this stock and start to identify some patterns for your own chart drawing. Thanks for stopping by. Again, don't forget to subscribe and catch you in the next one.